This meeting is being recorded.
We're going to take a few minutes to let people join the webinar. Hello and welcome to the Myositis Association's Empowerment Clinic on TMA Support and Affinity Group Program. My name is Rachel Bromley and I am TMA Senior Manager of Patient Education, Support and Advocacy. Today we have the honor of speaking with TMA group leaders Eric Rushlow and Shauna Nielsen. Eric Rushlow is from Central Connecticut and leads the Affinity Support Group Men Managing Myositis. He was diagnosed with dermatomyositis in 2021. After nearly 30 years in law enforcement, Eric retired in April of 2022 at the rank of police captain. He is currently a reserve officer working in Hartford County. He is married and has 3 children. Also joining us is Shauna Nielsen. Shauna Nielsen has been a registered nurse for 36 years and a myositis patient with DM for over 24 years. She teaches patient advocacy to nurses through independent RN patient advocates in Tucson, Arizona. She is a co-leader for the TMA Northern California Keep in Touch support group, as well as manages 2 Facebook support groups related to myositis. Shauna is passionate about the science and medical advances in myositis research and care. Her goal is for others to not suffer as she did early on. Shauna is now thriving with myositis and enjoys cooking, hiking, and taking bird photos. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And I am so excited. I've got a surprise guest today. It's one thing for me to come on and talk about our Support and Affinity Group program. It's another thing for our leaders to come on and talk about our Support and Affinity Group program. But last week I had a conversation with Mariel Parker. Mariel, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing great. And we had a testimony that she gave me that I just thought, wow, that's phenomenal. Could you please come on and share you and your family's experience with our groups? Mariel Parker is a family member and care partner for her father that has myositis. So why don't you tell a little bit about your father, what type of myositis he has, and your experience with, I don't know, half a dozen groups. I can't keep track of all the groups that you're involved in. So go ahead, take it away.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for welcoming me tonight. I really am grateful for this opportunity and just for the Myositis Association as a whole. And I'll get into why it's making such an impact in my family throughout the course of my talk tonight. But my father has inclusion body myositis. He was diagnosed about 11 years ago. He is now approaching his 81st birthday. So that lets you know he was in his 70s when he was pretty much beginning to experience some symptoms. I remember I had, my daughter was 2 at the time, and we were doing a family activity, walking at the nature center, and my father had to keep stopping along that path. And he was saying he was just so fatigued. My father is a former Marine and an attorney and a high-powered person, and nothing got in his way before this. So when he started to experience something like that, we started to become somewhat concerned. So that began our trajectory for many, many years, trying to determine what was going on. Went to many doctors, and they thought it was a back disorder. And thankfully, ultimately went to a surgeon. He was really on the cusp of saying, I need to have some help. He was, ultimately not having the ability to walk without falling. And it was difficult, and he was at the cusp of having surgery, as I said. And thankfully, we had an ethical surgeon who just said, if I can't be certain that I'm going to help you with this surgical procedure, I just cannot put you through that. And so somehow we were connected. At that time we lived in Michigan. Somehow we were connected to the University of Michigan, and my father had a biopsy, and that's when they diagnosed him as having IBM, which we knew nothing about. And my mother is a registered nurse, a retired public health nurse. And I have worked in healthcare. My degrees are in physiology and biology. So to have those backgrounds and to never have heard of myositis, and specifically inclusion body myositis, something that was going to devastate our lives, it was quite impactful, obviously, on us. And so
how long did it take you to find TMA?
Well, I would say we did not find out about TMA until we'd moved to North Carolina. And I honestly, I believe my father, upon starting his care at Duke University, and that was probably about 6 years ago, I believe at that point, he must have received some information about the Myositis Association. And I remember still at that point, I was not aware of it. And my father said, hey, there's a conference that I think maybe we should think about. And as a matter of fact, he said that I'd like you to think about. He wanted me to go and bring back the information for him.
Right.
Because he wasn't comfortable at that point. He wasn't comfortable traveling.
Right.
And since that time, one of the blessings of TMA is connecting with other people who are going through the same thing, going through something similar, just going through challenging health situations. And so we kind of pull together, it mobilizes you, I think, in a way that makes you say that, well, maybe I immediately would not feel comfortable traveling, but maybe I can do this. And we start to break down the steps to make it achievable. And I think that is one of the things that has helped through the Myositis Association, and specifically through our engagement with the North Carolina support group. Bob Noodleman has been, I have to say his name, I do, because
Right.
It almost makes me emotional because my father, I shared that he's, a former Marine, very private person, very strong, and just nothing would get in the way. And to this day, many people don't even know that he's dealing with this back at home, that he doesn't, that he has myositis. So he's very private. But and I say that to mean that the welcoming and engagement of Bob into encouraging my father to join the support group has just been so significant for us. Bob calls my dad if my father hasn't joined the support group session in a couple of months. Bob will pick up the phone and call him, and it's just kind of, man to man. They just know how to communicate that, and just not even from a emotional support or mental health support, but when we have encouraged situations where we have some hiccups with getting a new wheelchair and so forth, Bob and other members of the support group have been just so helpful with sharing what resources they use. So we've now started to use another durable medical equipment company that we weren't aware of before. So just sharing that knowledge has been so important for us. And that's why I hope to be as involved as I can be as well, because I hope to lighten the load for someone else that might be going through it, and maybe also to share the caregiver perspective.
Well, when I called you, it was funny because as I called you, your dad was with his home healthcare worker, and he was simultaneously talking about the veterans group meeting that he and you went to. So can you speak a little bit about that? You said he was a veteran. He found out about our affinity group.
That's right. Exactly. And that has opened up some areas of interest and some involvement that, again, we had not planned a couple of weeks ago of being involved in, but now we are, just because of that information. My father is a veteran, and when we became aware that there was a veteran support group, and one that was specifically talking about advances in claims through the government that would associate coverage through the Veterans Affairs, I guess it might be, administration for patients who have myositis of whatever various type it might be. But I think in this case it was IBM. Obviously, he became interested in that and wanting to know what he might be able to do, not only to be able to have an open claim for his own care needs, but also to be able to help others, since he is an attorney and thinking about it from that perspective, wanting to help. So he's been talking about it quite a bit at home, and I think wanting to become more involved in that. But excuse me, from the emotional perspective, it was wonderful as well, because my father joined that call, and thankfully with Zoom now, we can see a room full of, I don't know how many people participated.
We get a lot of, we have about 150 on the email list. And on average, we have about 27 people that come to the meetings each month. So.
Well, wonderful. Well, from our perspective on our computer, the Zoom room was full of veterans, and that was heartwarming to him to see. And then he was quite proud to represent. I think he was one of the only.
Yes, he was
Marines
the only jarhead there. Don't tell him I called him a
Yes.
jarhead. But yes, he was the only
He was
Marine
quite
there.
proud of that. And I think
Yeah.
you could just see him, his posture changed a little bit, and he felt proud to be amongst his brothers and his
Yeah.
sisters in that situation. And so that just, again, it's another area of support. What we found is at the beginning of our trajectory with IBM, it was quite isolating. My father didn't want anyone to know that there was something that he was dealing with that would impact him from being able to practice law. He's used to being at the podium, as a defense attorney, and now, through the course of time, he was no longer able to stand up at the podium, and then it impacted his self-esteem. But now we're, developing community again, and maybe redefining our purpose through this, and seeing that maybe there's a need for us to impact the world in a different area. So it's been wonderful. Also, I can share that there's the caregiver support group. Now, maybe about a year ago, I was, I usually join those North Carolina support group meetings with my father to help him to, he does not have good dexterity anymore, or the ability to move his arms and hands very well. So I'm there serving in that capacity for him as well. So I'll join and listen and comment. Well, Bob Noodleman got to know me quite well as well through that, and asked me if I would make a presentation from the caregiver's perspective. So I did, and it was really nice. We had just a room that time of just caregivers, and it was very enlightening to myself. I think when you're a family member and you're caring for someone you love, you just do what you have to do. And and I'm an only child. And I have one child, and that's my parents' only grandchild. So we have a very tight-knit family. So I say that to mean you just pull together and you do whatever you can do to make everyone's life happy. And so when I was speaking to other caregivers on that call, I found myself saying some words that I wasn't realizing I was going to say, which was, I guess I have been noticing the impact of stress in my own life, my own body. And so I was, sometimes it's easier to share with others, what you might recommend for other people versus kind of, taking that advice yourself. So I say that to mean sometimes as a caregiver, it is challenging to not forget to put your own mask on, your own oxygen mask on. But it's really important so that you can take care of your loved ones. And so to that means that I say that because I'm grateful that you have an entire support group series around caregivers, because we really do need that. It's difficult when you see someone that you love going through something that you can't cure. And with my father's situation, he's in a later stage of IBM, and so that means that he's in a power wheelchair 24/7, basically, and he has dysphagia. So eating is extremely difficult, and every bite is challenging. It literally, he has a speech therapist who works with him to try to strengthen the esophageal muscles and in his tongue and throat and so forth to swallow in a certain way that will be safe. But literally, as a caregiver, every time he swallows, every time he coughs, my ear is attuned to hearing, is this it's a time that he's truly swallowing? Is this a cough that means that he's in trouble? So I just say that to me, not to make anyone, sad, but it's the reality of IBM, and it's stressful. But life doesn't stop. And so, I'm talking with you from the car right now. I'm a mother, and I'm working mother. And so I'm waiting for my daughter in the school and so forth. And I'm still a daughter of a man with myositis, and I'm trying to cover all of these things. And, so I guess it's just the support groups are one wonderful resource that help to support us, help to lift us up. And we're just so grateful.
Well, I think that you have been, at least a little while ago, also involved in another affinity group. Can you speak to that group?
Yes, yes. There's the Women of Color Affinity Group, which I was really excited to see develop. I'm a Black woman, and I think being able to engage from a community cultural perspective like that, as well as just one additional way to be held up and lifted up. And that particular affinity group, led by some very dynamic women, who I'm just so proud to know, who I met through the TMA, of course. They held regular sessions that are designed just to be able to alleviate some stress, topics of discussion that might not have anything to do with myositis directly, but have everything to do with just feeling joy for a little bit of time, or, and so they had t-shirts and things to make you feel proud to represent myositis and the Myositis Association. So I wear my TMA Women of Color t-shirt proudly, just like I do the one that I received from you about the caregivers. So, and you'll be surprised, well, hopefully you won't be, but I received comments and questions about, what is TMA, what is myositis? And so that just gives me an opportunity to talk about it and educate. One of my passion points is not only to hopefully talk with other patients that might be able to benefit from hearing the trajectory of my family, like talking about the equipment that we use in our home. When we've had our vehicle equipped to be able to transport my father. My father was very proud of his black Escalade, Cadillac Escalade, and he didn't want to let that go. And so he researched a company that would equip that. And so when we pull up somewhere and the door goes up like a kind of like a Lamborghini gold door, and everyone looks, it gives
He's
us
looking for the red carpet, right?
It gives us an opportunity to talk with people about myositis, and many people from all different backgrounds who need assistive devices will ask, how did you do that? And so I just hope it is, allows us to help others. It really is. So the long and short of it is, it's just, I think the growth that we've seen in TMA since I became aware of it and engaged has been astronomical. And I'm really excited about where it's going to go. I hope we can advance research. I hope we can be involved in more device development. Just so many things that I hope we can do.
Well, you are a joy and a light. Thank you so much for sharing your optimism and your appreciation of TMA. We appreciate you back just as much. And so I'll let you go so you can go on about your mom life. Your daughter's probably there soon, and we will move on with the show. But thank you again, Mariel.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, here at TMA, we are very proud of our Support and Affinity Group program. As you can tell, we have several dozen regional support groups called Keep in Touch groups, as well as 8 affinity groups. What is the difference, you may ask? Well, a regional Keep in Touch group is geographically based. While the group may meet in person, virtually, or a combination, the members of the group live in the same region. An affinity group, on the other hand, is a virtual group only, and it's comprised of myositis patients across the nation and sometimes beyond that have something else in common than just having myositis. And so that commonality may be a number of things, and we will go into more detail later as I go over the groups. Both TMA support group or affinity groups can be composed of myositis patients, care partners, family members, friends, and those in the community seeking to learn more about myositis. The vast majority of a group will consist of those living with myositis who want to explore how they can better cope with the many challenges that come with a chronic illness. There are tremendous benefits gained by attending a TMA support or affinity group. Being active in a group, Mariel talked about this a little bit, a decreased sense of isolation. When members are surrounded by others who share similar experiences, it affords the opportunity to validate feelings and allows a supportive and safe environment. Feelings of loss, anger, sadness, anxiety, and depression can be openly and freely expressed in this environment with nurture and compassion as a response. The overall goal of our groups is to use optimism to encourage healthy and constructive choices that will reflect effective coping skills. And in doing so, we hope to provide you with a sense of family. So part of our family, Eric Rushlow, how are
Hey.
you doing? We're finally getting to you.
Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I want to thank you first and foremost for running the Men Managing Myositis affinity group. I roped Eric in because he volunteered to be part of our podcast, and our podcast you can find on our website and also in our monthly newsletter. We link to each new episode, and we are up to over 500 listens. We've had 10 episodes and over 500 listens. And so Eric was one of our guests on the podcast, and he was talking about retiring and I heard having a little more time on his hands. And so I scooped in and we talked about what he might do. And lo and behold, here he is managing an affinity group. So Eric, let's talk a little bit about your myositis journey. How did your diagnosis come about?
Well, sure. So I started having some symptoms in early 2021. Started off very common and for a lot of patients with DM is a facial rash. And initially, my GP thought it was just something environmental. They treated it, tried to treat it, didn't go away. It continued, and eventually things started rolling and getting a lot worse. It's funny, but my wife actually started doing some research on her own and found some TMA information, and pretty much called it within a couple of weeks of my
Really?
symptoms. Absolutely. Yep. And she, just from the research she was doing, and she, of course, couldn't do the biopsies and everything else that's required, but she knew right away from just some regular research and what she found online, and pretty much knew what was going on. And we kind of directed our treatment in that way, and seeking out doctors who were familiar with the disease. And it from May to September, which is relatively quick for most people to get
Yes, it
diagnosed.
is.
I was diagnosed that quickly, and it was a blessing because the treatment started right away. So unfortunately, it's been quite the journey, to say the least, and what we've had to go through. But I'm still here, and I'm doing very well. And I am happy to support the Men Managing Myositis group.
So how long after diagnosis did you get involved with support groups? It doesn't seem like it was too terribly long.
No, you wrote me in quite quickly. I started, doing my research. I found, the podcasts and different information out there. And then, be careful what you wish for when you mention you might have a little extra time on your hands. Someone might ask you, but I was, as very happy to jump in and start working on it. So, but it was very quick. I will say from diagnosis to getting involved into some things, it's, just a little over a year now.
Yes, that's amazing. That is amazing. And full disclosure, my whole purpose of this empowerment clinic really is to recruit more support group leaders. So shocker, I know. What motivated you to lead a group? Well, that would be me. So no, you probably had something behind the yes. I didn't twist your arm.
No, it didn't take much at all. I would think, now I hadn't come into this thinking, hey, I'm going to lead a group, a support group, and everything else. But you put the idea in my mind, and literally, I have spent. I knew what was involved. I had an idea. I know what a support group is. And I've spent my career helping people. I get so much out of helping people, and not just my regular job, but all the different little jobs that have come throughout my 30 years in law enforcement, where you join different groups to help things and make things better. When you see a problem, you want to fix it. I've always been a fixer. And when you gave me the opportunity of, by suggesting that, I mean, I didn't even balk at it, not for a second. You asked me, and I said, absolutely. I have another opportunity now to go out, provide more information, to more people and help. It's as corny as it sounds, but it's, that's what a group does. It helps people. And I see it as an opportunity for me, not work at all.
Right. You also have in that opportunity bonded with other men that had myositis. I know that we've got our Connecticut group started up, and then you have been assisting that leader, Gustavo Nava, who's currently meeting right now as we speak. You're missing his meeting tonight. Sorry about that. But that state reactivated. That group got back going again after COVID, and you were helping him. And then now he's helping you with men managing myositis. Can you speak a little bit to the friendships that have happened as a result of this support group?
Sure. Like you mentioned with Gustavo, I was actually a little under the weather last night. I'm still not great. You can probably hear it in my sinuses a little bit. Last night was not so great. I knew I wasn't feeling good, and I literally reached out a couple hours before, just in case I wasn't doing good. And I said, "Hey, Gustavo, would you mind helping me out tonight?" Absolutely, no problem. Jumped in it right away. What do you need me to do? And then, so I've been joining his groups in Connecticut, which is nice because you kind of, when you're in, that type of group, you feel like you're a little bit more part of something, kind of like the military thing. So I've met some people in Connecticut who are going going through what I'm going through. We talk about what facilities are in Connecticut, what they're doing for their care. So it's nice in that respect. And then, with the men aspect of things, Gustavo's there to help me out and stuff. And there's other men, obviously. We have a very large group, I would say, for being a new group. I think our first email invite was over 75 people. It might have been more, but I think 75 people signed up for it. And, each week we're getting 30 plus that actually remember to log on to Zoom and join us. So it's been really great in that respect.
And you've handled it really well, because that is a large group for a support group. It's large. And I know that you've just now conquered breakout rooms. So that's been good. Just like nationwide, you also break out in our TMA nationwide group. You break out into disease type. So IBMers can speak with IBMers and things like that. So yeah, you've really been full speed ahead with this group.
All over the world. We have people from Australia, England, Canada. So it's been pretty wild as far as, reaching out and getting, reaching a lot of different people.
And that's something that, we encourage people to, like Mariel, go to as many groups as they can, because the more help you get, the better. And they have different purposes. Like your affinity groups can be sometimes larger, and then you get the benefit of more people, more networking, more interaction. But sometimes the regional groups are smaller, and so you get more time to share your story. You don't have to worry so much about monopolizing the conversation, because there's less voices to be heard in the room. And so there's an intimacy there with the regional groups that sometimes is not with the affinity groups, and vice versa. You get more networking with the affinity groups. And so it's just good to do both, and do as many as you can. So I appreciate your flexibility in doing both as well. And I'm glad that you're getting some good out of both groups. So do you have a story about your group, something that you might share that was, just something a little neat about what came out of your group?
Sure. So, there's a lot of little stories here and there. I think the biggest thing for me so far has been, of course, my first couple of meetings, kind of like, hey, I want to make sure this thing goes right. I want to do everything right. I want to make sure that people are going to get what they need out of this. And the very first night that we closed out, they go an hour online. This went an hour and a half, and people wanted to stay on, and people had more to say. And, as I'm trying to disconnect and end the meeting for all in the room, so many people were like, Eric, thank you. Thank you for hosting this meeting. Thank you for getting this group, this type of group together as it pertains to just men, because it's a bonding thing, but there's also specific things that men go through and have to deal with. And to be able to have that forum in which people can talk freely, comfortably, is just awesome. And the point of it all is that one person in specific really hit home, and it got me, because he's like, thank you for doing this and hosting this. He's like, this is what I look forward to, because he has no caregivers. He has no, he's got a caregiver, but he has no family. He's wheelchair bound. He's very restricted as to what he can do and who he can communicate with. And this just provided him with, I was going to say hundreds, but, dozens of people that he can now reach out to, listen to, find a commonality with. And it was so emotional the way he explained it to me and thanked me for hosting the room. And I'm like, man, I'm happy to host. But it was just very touching to me. And I ended up closing the room and turning to my wife. I'm like, my God, they actually liked it. They enjoyed it. They need this. They need. And for me, it was awesome. It was, gave me goosebumps the way he was so appreciative of me hosting a room. And I'm like, this is nothing for me.
Right. Shauna, did you want to add something to that? I know I'm going to ask you.
Heartedly agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you, Eric. I have some people I need to send your way.
Right. Yeah. And the report said, I've gotten emails and phone calls about the group. It's just really, it's meeting a need. And, we've had a couple of women's groups since 2019. And it was, every now and then I'd get an email about what about a men's group? And it just meant so much to me that you were able to fill that void, because it was an unmet need. And now we're meeting it and improving lives. And that's what we're all about, right? We're improving the quality of life for our patients. And these support and affinity groups is just an excellent way to do that. So more questions for you. You've kind of touched on it, but how has being part of a group helped you on your own myositis journey?
So it's funny, but just recently I had some issues come up, and literally as I'm like prepping for one of my meetings, I was going over some information with another one of the members who is very, very well-versed in this. Now I'm brand new to this.
Yes.
Being just over a year, there's so much to learn about. And each one of us goes through a completely different journey. Mine might be rashes, others might be muscle, others might be organ involvement. And I actually had something come up, and mentioned it. And this guy was like, here's 4 articles. He already had the research done. He had some actual medical background, and said, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. And, here I am, I'm running a group, but yet I'm learning so much so quickly. And to be able to have that resource, and I hadn't even yet gone to TMA website yet, but this guy was like, no, this is on the website. He already found it for me. And it was
right.
And that type of resource is just awesome.
It really is. And it makes me want to point out that you don't have to be an expert to run a group. We provide training on support group leading and management, but you don't have to be an expert on myositis. You're a year in, and you're there with everyone else, moving along and learning together. And that's why these groups are so good, because you have a mix of brand new, newly diagnosed people, and then our seasoned patients who, like Shauna, you've got 1 year with DM. She's got 24 years. She's going on a quarter of a century. And I will tell you, she's the article lady too. She sends me articles
And videos. I could pick the best one.
So if you're ever at a loss for something, ask her. She
That's
probably
right.
has.
That's
it
what
in
we
her
do as
brain.
support group
Yes.
leaders. We support each other as well, which is fabulous.
Yes. So what are you looking forward to accomplishing in your group in the next coming year?
So as far as that goes, I have I think some pretty interesting guests lined up, which is nice because when we end the meetings or when we're in our meetings, we say, hey, what do you guys need as the group? What can I do to help you guys out? And I can say that just guys, because we're all guys, but
Yeah.
I say, what do you guys need? And they point out certain things. So I go out and target that. I have, some medical professionals lined up. I have a PT person because PT is big questions. There's new people that need to know whether they need to do PT, whether it's harmful. And not too long ago, a few years back, people were saying PT is not good for people with DMs or IBM. So we have those coming up. I have I've lined up I'm trying to think, a social media influencer that has DM that is interested in coming on.
Wow.
So he's pretty cool. He's got a heck of a lot of followers. And he's interested in coming in. And I think that'll be interesting. I want to make things interesting for the group. I want people coming back, not just for the support, but for relief, to be able to talk and be able to, maybe have a little fun with it as well, so.
So here's the money question. And I know it's self-serving because I work for TMA, but I just really want to impart to the audience the value of TMA. So the question is, what would life be like without TMA?
Well, first of all, I think if we didn't have it, there's a lot of bad information out there. So when I very first started Googling dermatomyositis, one of the first things I found was a life expectancy of 5 to 7 years. And I'm like, I'm at work. And I'm literally at work when I did some quick Googling. I was on lunch, I think, but and I saw that and my heart sank and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, how can that be? So there's a lot of bad information out there, but when I go through the articles on the TMA side, I'm learning stuff from me. I'm learning stuff from my group. I know it's good information. I know it's backed up, and I can see all the background information of the people who are supplying the information, not just regular internet stuff. So for me,
Mhm.
I provide a lot of information. Obviously, it's provided me a support group that, yes, I run it, but man, I get a lot out of it too.
Mhm.
That's why I think it's so important for me. And that's why I keep spreading the word on Facebook and different places and trying to get the word out because it's very important. And I'm truly appreciative of the information on there and put the information out there in my group all the time. So I'm thankful and I'm thankful for you asking me to become one of the group leaders.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate your volunteerism, your service to TMA, your commitment to the myositis community as a whole. It means a lot. So thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Eric's group, Men Managing Myositis, is just one of several affinity groups. Affinity groups play a vital role in ensuring an inclusive environment where all are valued, included, and empowered to succeed, and are a part of TMA's commitment to amplifying patient voices, health equity, and access. Our affinity groups also serve to help the organization create awareness and connectivity in communities where the groups have natural membership. The ability to effectively participate in this increased advocacy and awareness building is essential to TMA's work. Increased awareness of myositis has the potential to lead to earlier diagnosis and more effective treatments, improving the quality of life for our patients. TMA and our affinity groups also advocate for patients through educational and media events, as well as advancing legislation that remove barriers to accessing the best of myositis care. You can read more about them online by searching affinity groups on our website, www.myositis.org, but we're going to go through right now, and I'm going to just give you a brief overview of the groups that are out there and available. Adelante, as the Spanish-speaking population continues to grow globally, the U.S. is projected to be over 28% Spanish-speaking by 2060. The need for bilingual support functions in patient advocacy settings grows along with it. Many Spanish speakers in the U.S. and internationally face socioeconomic disadvantages, communication barriers, and demands that can impact their experience with chronic illness. Language barriers often result in lower quality treatment for patients living with myositis. Due to the variety of sociocultural factors affecting native Spanish speakers, TMA feels it is our responsibility to ensure that we are providing services that reflect the culture and values of the Spanish-speaking members of our community. Adelante is TMA's first affinity group delivered in a language other than English. Adelante is Spanish for moving forward, as so many of our myositis patients and their care partners continue to do despite chronic illness. Spanish speakers from all over the world meet in this volunteer-led group setting on the fourth Saturday of every month. TMA's Women with IBM affinity group. Women can have very different experiences than men in their life in general, but especially in dealing with chronic illness. They can have unique difficulties, such as the challenges they face being caregivers, balancing family and work, body image issues, and other illness-related issues that they feel more comfortable discussing among other women. The mission of TMA's Women with IBM Affinity Group is to improve the lives of women with inclusion body myositis through virtual connections and support that transcends geography. The group meets on the third Tuesday of every month. TMA's Caregiver Affinity Group. Well, a good caregiver group can be a lifeline, providing a place to share feelings confidentially, make friends, get help navigating the healthcare system, and learn from others who have walked a similar path. The group is an excellent resource for participants, offering information, resources, and strategies specific to caring for someone living with myositis and other health concerns. This group will additionally tackle issues common to caregivers, including time management, emotional and physical stress, financial strain, sleep deprivation, and isolation. TMA's Caregiver Affinity Group is designed to support caregivers and care partners of patients with myositis and to organize and activate them around issues their communities face. The group meets on the third Saturday of every month. Myositis disproportionately affects women of color. Non-white women are twice as likely to die than others with myositis, and they are 4 times more likely to die than white men with the disease. Women of color play a critical role in our society, but often find themselves working too hard to navigate a system that marginalizes them due to their multiple identities of race, gender, sex, ethnicity, class, etc. Many women of color need a place where they can talk about how to move away from survival mode. They want to be a part of a sisterhood of women who will partner with them to thrive. Organized in 2019, TMA's Women of Color, WOC, Affinity and Advocacy Group promotes awareness through the 3 E's: encouragement, education, and empowerment. They educate women and communities of color about the different forms of myositis and discuss issues specific to this population. This group meets on the 3rd Wednesday of each month. Military veterans with myositis. The TMA Veterans Affinity Group hosts patients and caregivers who have prior military service. This group will provide a comfort zone for veterans to discuss issues specific to their community and increase camaraderie by offering veterans opportunities to network with each other. The group members discuss ongoing issues surrounding the veteran healthcare crisis and address matters related to VA claims, disability, as well as how the serious mental health challenges connected to military service, such as depression, PTSD, and anxiety, have direct ties to other issues. This group meets on the 2nd Saturday of each month. Rainbow Warriors Affinity Group. Affirming Care recognizes the impact of sexual orientation and/or gender on someone's life. There are many health concerns that are unique to the LGBTQIA+ community, to include physical, mental, behavioral, and healthcare access issues. TMA is excited to announce LGBTQIA+ programming in the form of TMA's Rainbow Warriors Affinity Group. This group began meeting in June of 2022 to commemorate Pride Month. In addition to providing support around commonality, in addition to a myositis diagnosis, this group seeks to create connectivity within the broader LGBTQIA+ community and ensure all patients are provided an affirmative, inclusive, and respectful environment in healthcare settings and throughout their myositis journey. This group meets on the 4th Sunday of each month. Here is Eric's group, Men Managing Myositis. It's a place for men with any form of myositis to gain support from one another and discuss issues particular to their group. All are welcome, and the group meets on the fourth Tuesday of every month. Oftentimes, men are left feeling isolated because they do not feel comfortable expressing themselves in their daily life, especially to other men. Given everything we've learned, it's crucial that men utilize one another for emotional support. In addition to building a male-focused, compassionate environment, the TMA's Men Managing Myositis will focus on community ambassadorship and outreach to men for symptom recognition, advocacy, and coordination with civic and community organizations serving men and their specific needs and interests. And finally, we have our TMA's Flying Solo Affinity Group. Social engagement increases our sense of well-being and support, connection with people, developing friendships, and finding people who care about us. Broadening our circle with peers who understand the challenges of living with myositis is invaluable to patients who live alone and may lack a support network. Flying Solo is a TMA affinity group designed to support patients living alone. Those who are managing myositis without the help of a care partner should feel free to join this group to expand their support network. The group meets on the first Wednesday of every month. And I want to say about this particular group, we had a couple join, and I really wanted them to feel included and accepted in being part of this group, because it turns out that the reason that they were joining this group was that they were both elderly and they were worried about the caregiver passing away before the patient did. And they wanted to connect with people who were already doing it by themselves to get knowledge and resources before they might possibly need it. We also had someone that didn't live alone that joined us, a couple of people, because they were caregivers for their partner that lived with them. And so you don't necessarily have to live alone, but if you feel as if you are managing myositis alone, then you are welcome to attend this group. Our regional support groups are just as vital. Shauna leads the Northern California Autoimmune Support Group. Shauna, you're finally up. It's your turn.
Thanks for sticking with us, you guys.
So tell us about your journey. You were talking almost a quarter of a century of
I've had myositis
dermatomyositis.
a long time. There are definitely questions about whether my rashes as a child were myositis. I had rashes with both pregnancies. So I had intermittent on and off rashes for a good 14 years, and they would come over a 6 or 8 week period and then they would go away. They would come after vacation, driving in a car with all that sun, or after my daughter's soccer tournaments where I could do 1 game a weekend, but when we did 4 games in 2 days, it was too much sun for me. So I'd get set off and I would feel horrible for weeks. It took me probably half of the 14 years, 7 years to get a diagnosis.
Wow.
Rash after rash after rash. And then a good dermatologist finally came up with a diagnosis. And as a good nurse, I'd never heard of it. And I looked it up and went, oh, some people never get muscles. Closed the laptop and said, I don't need to learn about that. I can live with a little rash. Well, 14 years later, or 7 years after diagnosis, I crashed and burned. And I'd been on no treatment those 14 years. Spotty, I'd have steroids for a week or 10 days, and then it would go away. I'd only had 1 episode where it lasted a few months. But again, it went away and no one gave it a name. Finally got a name and thought, well, I'll never get to the muscles. I'm past 2 years. It'll never hit my muscles. And we went up skiing one weekend and I pretty much couldn't walk when I got home. And I sat on the couch for a couple of weeks and my friends called and said, you never sit on the couch. What's going on? And I finally decided to go in and see a doctor because I felt so poorly, but I'm a nurse. I did not connect dermatomyositis with the muscle problems I was having because I closed the laptop years before. This wasn't going to happen to me. So I went through many years of denial until I finally went in and I had all the blood tests. I'd seen a doctor, and over the weekend I went, myositis, that's what I'm having. So then quickly got in and got started with some treatment locally, but this doctor wasn't aware enough. And by the 2nd or 3rd visit, I said, how many patients have you seen with myositis? And are any of them back to their life? I was down to 30 steps a day. I mean, it really took me quickly to the pit.
Wow.
So I needed oxygen and a walker, and I could barely get to the bathroom. And he said, well, I have 12 patients, but none of them are doing as poorly as you are. And I said, are any of them back to living their normal life? And he said, or semblance of normal life. And he said, no. And I went, uh-oh, I'm a nurse. This is not the answer I want. And so I did a search, and I talked to a friend whose mother was in charge of dermatology for most of California with Kaiser. And I found a name. She asked her mother if she could see anyone, who would you go to? And we came up with the same name at Stanford. So once I got there, I got expert care, and it still took about 2 years to get IVIG. And that's when things took a turn for me. I would say it was still another slow 4 years before, and 2 years of physical therapy straight. I mean, I just worked as hard as I could. But the first thing I did once I knew that that's what I had was look it up and find TMA and start chatting on the chat boards. And at some point, the chat boards, they switched platforms online, and the chat board degraded significantly. And so that's when I moved to Facebook and joined a couple of big groups. And now I moderate 2 groups for myositis. One is for myositis patients, friends, and family, and one is just for patients, dermatom and polymyositis. So when I could not move and get out of my chair or couch or desk, the internet provided an outlet for me to share what I was learning, to learn from TMA, and to stay active on my keyboard, so that as a nurse, I didn't feel so unable. I couldn't work anymore. There were lots of things I couldn't do, but I've always sort of been a positive person. And so I looked at what can I do? How can I stay positive? I went to the first TMA conference I rented a scooter when I got there. I'd planned ahead. I traveled on my own, but I got there with a scooter with help getting in and out of the van to get to the hotel. And it changed my world. The doctor that I picked at Stanford was on the board and gave a talk. Wow. Chided me a bit and said, I know you, no questions from the peanut gallery. I'm going to see you next week. But it provided this amazing experience of the top knowledge. The first conference, the gal from Sweden who proved that exercise wasn't bad for us. She was in Sweden. She had some military men that did better, and they wouldn't stop exercising. And she convinced, I think, 18 of them to do repeated calf biopsies before this 12-week exercise program and after, because the belief was that our high CK related to people who ran marathons, and they're supposed to rest when they're done. So they'd always been telling us to rest. Well, she proved that rest wasn't best, because she knew her military guys were doing better than the rest of her patients. And at that point, I went on a mission, and I found her research, and I took it to my doctor, and I said, this is one of the things I'm really good at. I highlighted the beginning and the end of the report and said, I'm seeing online and in this medical article that exercise is really good for us. I'm going to give you this article, but can we talk about physical therapy next visit? Well, I got an order the next visit, and off I went. So
how long did it take you before you got involved with the support groups?
Probably about that 2-year mark. When I started IVIG, I had a little bit more energy, but still it was far for me to drive. So I got a ride one time and then didn't get back in person to the support groups for a long time. I was in touch with the leader. I saw her at all the conferences. I met people that were in my area, and we communicated with email. But the Zoom meetings for me have been really exceptional. And so when our long-term leader just decided to step down, I picked another friend of mine that had spent a lot of time on the phone with me from Northern California and said, hey, I'm willing to do this. Would you help?
Right.
So it's the same as Eric. Anybody we ask will help. And the old leader, if somebody, one time Karen was in the hospital, one time I couldn't do it, and the old leader comes and helps. So we've got tons of support.
Well, what do you appreciate the most about your support group?
Knowing that other people are going through this too. I'm not alone on this desert island struggling with these things. That some of us have made it further and are thriving with it. Some of us are still struggling, but that we can share in the challenge, that we can share what's exceptional treatment right now and where is that happening in our area, and how do you access that care? That's just vital for us in our group. To know I'm not alone, to have people to reach out to when things are tough.
Mhm.
It's just invaluable when you have a rare disease like this. And
I see someone, I'm sorry, I see
ask me a
someone with
question.
their hand up.
Yeah,
I cannot take your question. If you could put it in the Q&A box, then I can take your question. Thank you. So what motivated you to lead the group?
I think just because our leader was stepping down, she needed some more space in her life. And it had
Mhm.
always been something I was interested in. I'd looked at joining the board, but the travel for me is a challenge. I need oxygen to fly. And so getting to those meetings was more than I could do. So this is something I could do. I've always tried to support you guys and send articles when I find a really gemmy one to get onto the website. Most of the articles relate to some of our medical advisory board. The doctors do research actively on myositis, and there's no other group that I know of where you can get 23 physicians in one location willing to talk to patients on the side while they're having lunch, or in a meeting. You can ask them a personal question or a question about a situation they can answer. They don't do personal medicine while they're there, but they can say, in that setting, this is what I would ask my team for.
Right.
And so that kind of knowledge for me has been invaluable and really helped me move my case forward.
Do you have a story to share from your group?
I do. When we started, we had some new members join, and one of our members is very highly educated and can't show up on the weekends when we generally have our meetings. And so she sent me a message and said, can we meet in person? And I said, absolutely, let's set up a time. So we set up a time, and she asked me a bunch of questions. And then she said, Shauna, I really need to let you know that I've had this disease a long time. And I've never advocated for myself until I heard you two talking about how you advocate for yourselves.
Wow.
That I would just do whatever the doctor said. If you asked me what medicines I was on, I couldn't even tell you. And now I'm taking an active role. As smart as she is, that hadn't occurred to her, that she could pick and choose which options to try. And
well, aren't you also the one
team.
that talks about shopping for a doctor?
Absolutely. I have a couple questions I like to ask doctors, especially after that second or third visit, like how many patients and how are they doing? But before that, if someone gives me a name, I will call the office, and without saying, hey, I'm Shauna, I just say, hey, I have a really weird, rare disease that I think fits in your practice. Does your doctor see this disease? You tell me, does your doctor like puzzles? And if they say not so much, it's about, do they want to cure? Because we're not cured usually. We just manage really well with this disease if we get everything right. I asked them how many times do they have to bother the doctor to get them out to speak to an expert, another physician. And if that's not more than 5 or 6 times a week, I don't think they're the person for me, because I need someone who loves puzzles, doesn't have to cure me, and is willing to talk to other doctors and collaborate. Because that's going to get me furthest. And if I get no's to those, I don't even make the appointment. And I will say, I'm calling to see whether it makes sense for me to make this appointment. Can I talk to the nurse in the back office that works with him most? And then I just ask yes or no questions. I don't want her to have to divulge anything on the phone, but I don't want to waste your doctor's time. Does he like this? Does he like that? What? Yes or no's, so that I can get some answers before I commit my time.
That is wonderful advice. And that's the type of thing that you will find in your Northern California support group and other groups, learning how to advocate for yourself. So how has being part of a group helped you on your own myositis journey?
Oh, it's helped me a ton just to feel vital and participatory. You know, there's a lot of sitting at home when your muscles don't work. And so getting to the conferences, meeting people, we check in for birthdays, we check in when we're at the conference, we go to dinner, we send messages, and we know who has what pet. And it's a whole other social group when your local social group may shrink when you're unable to participate physically in the way that they're expecting.
What are you looking forward to accomplishing in your group in the next coming year?
I think we're hoping to have some speakers. We're going to try changing some times. We're going to try an evening meeting. I'd love to send out a survey. I haven't mastered Survey Monkey yet, but I think that's in our future, to see what times would work best for people.
I can help you with Google Form. That one's easy.
We do have a location where we can meet in person. It's a hospital setting where we could get lunch. And as COVID tapers down, I think it might be more reasonable to consider doing another in-person meeting.
Right, that'll be exciting.
Yeah.
So you get this question that Eric also got, what would life be like without TMA?
Oh, I don't know where I'd be without TMA. The experts that were willing to talk with me early on, and that includes Bill Simmerall and who's the gal in Florida? Marianne Moyer. Have been fabulous. Without TMA, I wouldn't have the conferences. I've been to 3. I go every time they're on the West Coast. I commit to get there and be there fully. It would just be less rich, I think. And I'd have less confidence and acceptance of myself. My life is a little bit slower, but it's still a fabulous life, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So, I mean, we'd all like not to have this, but being that that's not our choice.
Right.
Managing it in the best way possible. And I'm really good at rethinking things. The only thing I can change is how I think about it. So what can I do? How can I participate? And so participating at TMA is a fabulous way for me to be involved and get to know people and share what I know.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank both of you for being here. I really appreciate you. Your stories have been wonderful. I'm a little over time, but I'm going to go ahead and help others find support groups. I want to show you how to find a support group. So you go to myositis.org, patient support, and then support groups. Once you go to support groups, then there'll be a button to click that says find a support group. It'll bring you to this page. You can put in your zip code. You can zoom in on the map. You can also go scroll down and see it by state. And you can also contact support groups at myositis.org or myself, Rachel, at myositis.org. If there is no group near you, you are more than welcome to come to TMA's nationwide virtual support group. We created this group specifically to meet the unmet need of people that didn't have the regional kits. And so please come. It's on the first Saturday of each month. We also separate into breakout rooms by diagnosis type. And it's just a good time. It's a large group and we have a really good time, you know, connecting with each other. All right, let's see here. Finally, I have a question to ask of the audience. Would you like to become a TMA officially certified support or affinity group leader? We have been adding to our ranks and exciting things are happening. Wisconsin, Ohio, Connecticut, upstate New York have all reactivated with new leadership and we are looking for more. We provide training and have a certification class coming up in November. It doesn't require a heavy time commitment and we also understand the ebb and flow of volunteering while managing a chronic illness. If you're interested, please email me at rachel@myositis.org. That is all for today. Thank you to Shauna and Eric for joining today's webinar. Thank you to Mariel for her testimony. Thanks to all the volunteers out there that make this programming a reality. And thanks to you for tuning in. Please join us for our next webinar, which will be an empowerment clinic on managing mental health through the holidays. That airs on Tuesday, November 15th at 6 p.m. Eastern. For TMA, I'm Rachel Bromley. Good night.